Hi everyone, my name is Daniela Gibbs-Leger and I'm the Senior Vice President for Communications at the Center for American Progress. Thank you all for coming to this screening. We are really excited to have a great panel here tonight.
In particular, the amazing Ken and Andy.
And David, one of the filmmakers here. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
David, if I could start with you, this was just an amazing film. What drew you to tell this story?
I mean, what drew me to tell the story was, I think, what drew the whole country's attention to this. This was a story that had such profound resonance throughout the United States. It was a black woman hanged in a southern Texas jail cell. You know, it had resonance to everyone of the Deep South. And how could this be continuing in 2015? It just made no sense. And when you got to know Sandy, and I hope you all, feel like you got a sense of her character in the film, it didn't fit. It didn't fit. And everyone, I think, around the country was like, we need answers, we need answers, we need answers. And as documentary filmmakers, that's what we do, we look for answers.
I say that's one of the most incredible things I think about this film is that you had her words. So many times in these stories you don't get to hear from the victim. So how was it going through all that footage and figuring out what to use?
I mean, it was a gift. And it was eerie because it felt like Sandy knew what was coming in some scary way, And it makes me sad because here's a woman whose voice should be heard anyway, and maybe it took her dying in jail to give her a platform big enough now we can bring this film out, and it's gonna be on HBO on December 3rd. It's been at film festivals. The sisters were on The View this morning. I mean, that would not be happening if Sandy hadn't died in jail. You have to feel horrible about that, but you have to also think, Sandy needed to say something. So I just have to say, it was an honor being with the family on this incredible ride overall.
And Ken, you actually knew Sandra, knew her before she passed. So tell us a little bit about her, and then also what was your reaction to how the prosecutors and how the police were portraying her in her death?
So first, thank you guys so much for being here. It is such a touching thing to see that you're all here. I just need to say that. And I know that I can say this for the family's sake. Your presence and your energy and your support means the entire world to them. So thank you for that. I knew Sandy because I represented Sandy in a car crash where you saw in the film that a motorcycle had rear-ended her. I went to the same church that she went to, but didn't know her and didn't know her family. I can tell you though, in answer to the second question about what was brought to us and what I continued to face in dealing with law enforcement, the officials down in Waller County, it really had to do with the frustrations that you saw the family suffer. It really, I think that's the thing that drives me most in situations like this. You can't give them what they ultimately want, because what they ultimately want is what we saw, her. I'm left knowing I can never accomplish the goal. Right? So the only thing you can do is try and get them as much information as quickly as possible so that they can somehow contextualize what they're being asked to stomach. And, I don't know whether or not it was gamesmanship or instead it was not knowing what to do, but a lot of the things that we got faced with were damning and damaging to her and attacked Sandy's character, and that was unacceptable.
And during this time, obviously there were a lot of awful incidents happening with Black men and policing, and it seemed like a lot of the stories that were happening, a lot of the incidents that were happening with Black women were not getting publicity. And then this happened, and I think for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, it kind of stuck in everybody's mind. But I mean, I can list a bunch of obvious reasons why I think it is that it's harder for Black women's stories to get out there, but especially you as a filmmaker, why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, speaking of empowered women, my wife, Kate Davis, who co-directed this film, can't be here, and I wish she could answer that because there's a lot of beautiful estrogen behind this project. Sandra herself, her mom, her sisters, they're incredible forces, that need to be acknowledged. And so, in answer to your question, women should be listened to. They're just not. They're treated as second-class citizens in many ways, especially in the African American community. We saw her story as male or female, though, as a really rare example of someone who left this incredible political legacy that spoke so accurately to what happened to her that she ended up becoming the narrator of her own film. And when, as filmmakers, that we went like, this is a film that needs to be made. She just set the bar. Like, we hope we can reach it.
That scene when the dash cam video, when you see him berating her, when he implies that he would stop using force on her, she would just listen. As a Black woman, it sort of made all the hairs on my neck stand up. And everything that you're taught about tone and how you're supposed to react to authority, from your experience dealing with law enforcement and these type of proceedings, what does that say about, misogynoir and how Black women especially interact with the criminal justice system?
It says a ton. First and foremost, Black women are much more inclined, much more likely to be stopped in a traffic situation than I am.
Is that right?
Done it right. And it ain't fair. What I know is that the pillars of my community are women, my matriarchy. So to me, when I think about the fact that so much of who I am, so much of what I am, so much of what I emulate and aspire to be comes from the women in my community, it's a particular attack that I think it's unknown and it's incendiary. He's done another film, Traffic Stop.
Right.
Another instance in Texas where a Black woman was violently attacked by an officer. It's commonplace and it shouldn't be, but this is a conversation piece. And if you listen to what Sandy would say to you, and what this film I think underscores is that there is the possibility of progress, and it rests in our hands. Don't leave this theater and don't have a conversation with somebody you know. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't let people not engage because they're ignorant. Not stupid, ignorant. Just don't know. It's all about perspective.
Yeah, and the answer is not just, as a Black person driving a car. Because I've done screenings, it's fair to say I've done screenings around the world with this film. Whenever we do a screening with a Black audience, Chicago, St. Louis, people get up and they talk about, it happened to me, it happened to me, it happened to my cousin, it happened to everybody I know. I've never had a white member of the audience stand up and say, it happened to me. I mean, what? Pardon my French, but what the
No,
like,
yeah.
that
You can say that.
Yeah, I'm saying, well, I did and I stand by it. So just to circle back to finish the thought, which is, people say, well, one of the criticisms that people want to level at Sandy's, well, she didn't just shut up, right? Well, first of all, two things wrong with that. But the first thing that's wrong with it is just factual. She did shut up.
Yeah.
He pulled her over, said license and registration, gave it to her. He walks away. 5 minutes later, he comes back, guess what she says? She didn't say anything. He goes, you look irritated. And then she says, well, I am, and he explains why, and then she stops talking. And he says, are you done? Well, I mean, as Ken and I talked about this before, but when my wife Kate and I argue, if either of us say, are you done? Right? I mean, really, right? So and she goes, well, you asked me, and yeah, now I'm done. And then she stops talking again. And then he goes back. Like, this is a guy with an agenda. So one of the issues we have to face in America, it's a two-part. Part A, part B of the one of the issue is, what do you do with cops who have an issue with like asserting power? How do you, as a black person with a lot of resentment, deal with that? And how do you train cops to like dial it back? You do not need to needle people. And because that's what happened here. He was pushing the buttons and he wouldn't let go.
But there's an answer to that question, right? The what you do is you survive the encounter. You have to survive the encounter. It's not about whether or not you fight. It's when you fight and how you fight. You'll never ever win that fight on the side of the road, right? You'll never win that fight. But when there is wrongdoing that happens, then you have an obligation to yourself and to the people around you to report it. And what we don't do is hold law enforcement accountable. And I think what you find is that a lot of law enforcement wants to see these things eliminated because they feel, just like we feel, that it's bad. It creates problems. But they need the political backing, just like mayors need political backing and the like, to be able to do that. We've got to give that to them by demanding changes.
So obvious question, if Sandra was white, would she still be alive today?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I vote yes. You know, I mean, you have to get your crystal ball out. But I love the answer of Hannah Bonner, Reverend Hannah Bonner, who was there, saying, yeah, you know, racism killed Sandra Bland. And my wife Kate and I, we did this film called Traffic Stop that Cannon mentioned, which is another driving while black story. It was a short film, and it got nominated for an Academy Award last year and won a bunch of prizes. We were on a TV show with an African-American host on Sunday morning. She had the usual chit-chat, talked about the film, played a clip. The segment is over, cameras turned off. She said, the reason I had you guys on, because my son is 19, I'm a well-to-do woman, I live in a good neighborhood, he drives a nice car, he's been pulled over 6 times, and he had his license in 1 year and hadn't done anything. That's why we're here. You know, so yeah, her death, I mean, it springs from this systemic profiling, targeting, and mistreatment of people based on how they look.
Do we know where Officer Insignia is now? I mean, it's enraging that nothing happened to him.
So we don't know. We know that he's not, according to them, able to serve as a police officer in the state of Texas, but who knows where he could go from here. What we do know is that we specifically, in having the conversation with the special prosecutors, let them know we wanted him to be prosecuted. We would rather see you prosecute him and lose than to cut a deal with him. They promised us that they would do that. You saw the outcome. And so I think a lot of times what happens is families are met with inconsistency, I'll put it that way. And so it makes it difficult for families even more. It's a continual assault on them.
Can you talk about some of the reforms that were put into place after the settlement?
So one of the things I admire so much about the family, Geneva and Sharon and Shantae and Cece and Siobhan, is that when we approached them about the notion of trying to infuse sort of factors beyond money into the settlement, they were completely on board. They were completely supportive of it. Geneva used to walk around with a t-shirt that had other victims' names on it. Other people who had died because she wanted to make sure that they were being highlighted too. That's who these people are. That's who Geneva is. That's who Sharon is. That's who Shantae is, and Siobhan and Cece. And so when we looked to try and see about making changes in that jail, we were able to do it. Now they have to have nurses on staff 24 hours a day. Now they have to have, and they have cameras in that jail all over the place, and they have monitors so that you can't falsify records. The de-escalation, it hurt. That hurt. But it's not over, right?
I just want to say, a shout out to the family and to Cannon about this. We got involved in this story about 10 days. We started filming about 10 days after Sandra died. So it was very early. Nobody knew where this was going to go. And we got to watch Ken and the family go on this extremely painful ride. I mean, the family didn't have a chance to grieve the loss of their daughter, their sister. They didn't know what they would learn one way or the other. Speculations were swirling and the press was breathing down. And throughout it all, they maintained this incredible dignity and positivity. And they didn't want to play the race card precipitously. They were like, let's just search where we can go. And even after de-escalation was stripped from the bill, you would have to pry from their mouth a sense of frustration. They're going, but they will say, I mean, Case Cannon just said, they will say, yeah, but we got something done. We got something done. Mm-hmm. And, and I think it is the credit to this amazing family that, first of all, so much did get done. You guys really got a lot done. And it doesn't happen to everybody. And you fought the best, loftiest fight you could fight. So I don't know, I'm just, Kate and I were really in deep admiration of how you guys comported yourself throughout this ordeal. A lot of people would have gotten a lot nastier, a lot angrier, because you got a lot of stuff going on.
And if you look at listen to what Sandy was talking about. She's talking about coalition building, bridge building. She's talking about we can do this together, that optimism will overcome. And I think we have to embrace that. And then we have to use the apparatus that we have to make change. We can do it, we've done it. I mean, we've done it, and we can do it again. And that's what this family is all about. That's the side that they come on.
No shit, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
We will open it up for a question or two from the audience. There's a microphone, you can just state your name, affiliation, quick question.
Yeah, I'm gonna go as quick as I can, but please bear with me. My name is Macon Taylor. I now live in Washington, D.C. I actually am originally from St. Louis, Missouri. Grew up in Ferguson, Missouri. Knew Mike Brown. This work is very important to me. I don't know if Ms. Nira Tandon is in the house, but I was actually at a CAP event a few years ago that was speaking about the Mike Brown event, and Gloria Totten was on the panel. And I just want to say that I also think, even though you said race card, Sandra speaks specifically to race. And I am in line with her in that I am not looking to incite anybody. But this has never been an easy conversation. And with the 4 pages of black codes and the reckless bawling, ultimately that created this whole event that's on that law, and I still don't know whether these black codes have been removed. I think that we need to look at it in terms of that. But I also say that these think tanks, Center for American Progress, American Enterprise, Jonah Goldberg just said capitalism is a miracle. I felt that as a microaggression. So I'm saying that I looked at Gloria Totten in her face and said, I don't know many white women, nor do I know how to trust you because it's such a different barrier and the unspoken we live through. So I think that we should absolutely continue to commemorate the memory of Sandra Bland by not brushing over it. I wrote a book, 7 Steps to Kill My I said it that day, Nira Tandon, because the ideology, the pathology is yet to be dealt with for both oppressor and oppressed. So I lived this experience, and as you said, what the So if you have to say that, but there's some side that's living it every day, there has to be a space created for people who do this work. I am Sandra Bland. I cry because I know that at any moment, when I walk into the museum and they say I don't belong here and I try to fight for my right, I could end up dead with my twins behind me. And that's a very heavy load to carry. So I'm just saying that I ask us not to walk out of here entertained. I ask you to walk out of here ready to work, and until, like I say, I want to take my ball and go home. I say take your power back, call in black, because at the end of the day, if we keep playing with this, it's a systemic issue. We're at the intersection of all things business, public, private, professional. Everything happens right here. You're at the start. I'd like everybody to lend their hand to actually reversing the racism and stop playing with it. That's what she didn't do. And she died as a result of that. I'm not here to be entertained. I'm not in this district just to be here. It is time for something different, and it starts with us not walking out entertained, but walking out looking at our network and saying, how do we impact this? You have a conversation with me without thinking I'm weird. When I come to you and say, may I have your card? And I say, do you know Baxter, Swilly, or that family? Those are the things that I'm looking to do. Please don't walk out of here entertained. Walk out of here and know that people walk around every day scared for their life trying to fix this. And it's people who are in powerful positions who can do very simple things to assist those people on the bottom. So again, I don't really have no question. I'm just saying, please honor her memory and deal with your issues of race. By 7 Steps to Kill My hit the stole it. The people who published it for me, I don't get a dime for it. But I would like to refute to fix that. But my point is, if you get those steps, it helps to remove the color and just get to the spirit of being human.
Thank you very much. So to her point, what is something that everyone can walk out here right now doing?
I think what you're talking about is exactly what I was trying to speak to too. You've got to speak to your spheres of influence. I mean, we don't have this conversation. We're not taught it in school. We don't have them in class. At best, you have the conversation at the dinner table in a certain kind of way, depending on who's at that table. And so what I'm suggesting is that we start to have the conversation more than once. Don't leave and say to yourself, boy, that's a shame. Talk to somebody about it, because that energy creates what you're talking about. It really, I mean, there's a fix to this. Because, Barack said, he said, if you think we are where we were 50 years from now, you're crazy. And he's right. So if that's the reality, that means we can make progress, right? Because we've made it. We just have to continue to do so. That's really what it comes down to. You got to talk to people, but you got to talk to them truthfully. You cannot be afraid of race. I mean, race is in the fabric of this country, and there's no plan about it, no pretending about it. But look at this room. This tells me that there's potential. So you may not know white women, but you can meet one today.
Yeah, no, I know them.
Okay, but I'm saying, you can meet one today.
I've met them. How do I interact with them?
No, I received that. I'm just saying, and that's not an indictment of you. I'm saying it's an opportunity. And I say we all should take the opportunity.
We can all learn. And when Kate and I got into this, we were very well aware that we are white filmmakers coming in on a story that is basically a black story. I mean, although I have to say, it's really a white story. It's a story about white upness, but it's a white story. Like,
Story about white supremacy.
Right, about white supremacy, right. So it's a white story too. It's a national story, and that's, I think, what we learned. We learned, and I'm still learning, like, Canada doesn't even know this, but I'm gonna share this with you all. It'll make you laugh. The other day, some people asked, like, what was it like when you first went down to talk with the family? And it was 10 days after Sandy, it was a week after Sandy had died, and I flew down to Chicago, I met with Ken, and I said, he's a scary guy. And Shantae said to me, when you as a white man talk about you as scary, she says, you don't understand how that comes off. I was like, you got a point. And what I should have said is, he is a powerhouse lawyer who jealously guarded the interests of his clients, and it was intimidating for me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's where we gotta learn. And I had to learn, and this is after I made the damn film. Like, so, it's a slow process. You gotta chip away at like the stuff that and I meant it well. Because Ken and I we're friends, right? So I'm just saying, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. And everybody has to show up for work and go, okay, I gotta learn.
Do we have time for one more, Billy? Yes. Okay.
Why don't we take two at once?
Sorry about
Quick question, Cannon, you mentioned that you're not gonna win the argument at the roadside. And I think that all of us wanna maintain our dignity, and just about everybody in my family has been stopped for no reason, and some of the people in my family have been put in handcuffs for no reason. But I think the bottom line is you have to survive the traffic stop in order to move on to make other changes. And so I think as an attorney and as a person who's knowledgeable about this kind of thing, what's your advice? What should we be telling our sons, daughters, grandsons, granddaughters, nieces and nephews, how they should handle themselves when they are stopped by the police? And understanding we want to maintain our dignity, but at the same time, it's more important to survive, to be able to move on to the next day.
And I would say surviving does maintain your dignity. I agree with you. And I think that's why I train on this, right? There's an acronym that we use, it's called HOW-TO. And it speaks to how to engage and interact with the police when you get stopped, the H. As soon as you see the lights and sirens behind you, you turn your hazard lights on. You're immediately communicating to the officer that you intend on cooperating and that you don't want a problem any more than you're going to present a problem to them. Oh, out with the keys. In talking to police officers, what you'll find is that a lot of times their biggest fear in a traffic situation is that people will use their vehicle as a weapon. So if you take your keys out of the ignition, you put them on the dashboard, they can't say that, they don't have that fear. You've stripped them of that. W, roll your window down. Roll your window down so you can communicate with them and they can communicate with you clearly. It makes it easier for that to happen, and it also helps them to be able to see that you're not posing a threat to them. And 2, put your hands attended to with your palms open so that they can see where your hands are and they can see what you're doing. Is it something that you feel like you shouldn't have to do? I get it, maybe so. But again, it's about trying to find ways to minimize the potential for harm. And this is something that we talk to police officers. There's an organization called NOBLE. It's the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement. And they have sanctioned this as well. They've signed on to this as well. And in Illinois, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the Secretary of State, when they hand out the handbills, when you get your driver's license, to hand out HOW-TO too, right?
Do it.
Do one final question.
Thank you, and thank you for being here in this panel. I just had a question for David, the filmmaker. I was just wondering what you envisioned was I guess, like a goal or result that you think from the film, aside from maybe exposure. And if you have, this is being put on through the Center of American Progress, I'm interested if you envision any connection to sort of like policy or policy initiatives or other sort of results from this film.
Wow, that's a great question and a big one. I mean, when you first started making the film, my big vision was maybe we could finish the film. Like that, as a filmmaker, you don't know where you're going. We started down this road with these guys. They didn't know us, we didn't know them, we didn't know where the story was going. So first of all, I was just trying to figure out what was happening and learning as we went. By the time we got to the end though, I sensed that, as I said before, one of the things that I really wanted is for people to hear Sandy's voice. Because I think she has a message to deliver that I think is important. Because I've learned a lot from. We have to listen to each other, we have to talk to each other. If we don't do that, we're doomed. And I think she's right. Policy-wise, yeah, I think police de-escalation is one of the things that is at the heart of what went wrong here. This is a woman who was on her way to get groceries, who had a positive vision for what she was doing and ended up really badly beaten up by the side of the road. We're not talking about, her wrist got twisted when they put the handcuffs on, deep bruises to her back, scars all over. This is a terrible, terrible thing that held in solitary confinement. So we need to think about how that can happen to someone who absolutely had all the good intentions in the world and somehow runs afoul of law enforcement, and this can be the result. It's profoundly wrong. So I think the policy goes to, and unfortunately, it's not a national policy, it's a state policy. Because each state controls their local police. I used to be a prosecutor in Manhattan before I was a filmmaker 20 years ago, and I worked in New York State. Each state has its own laws. So you're talking about changing laws in every state. Now, there are federal rules that could be refined to control that, but we're getting into the weeds. The idea is that's what I would love to see happen. But more than anything else, I would like to see the national dialogue become less polarized, more open-minded. One of the things that makes me really happy is that black and white, you and I can sit up here and be friends and say we learned from each other and we went on the journey together and came out okay. And I hope that speaks to something positive that can happen in 2018, where otherwise it feels like we're on such on the wrong path. So, I don't know, that's my thought.
I'd like to end on that positive note.
Okay.
So thank you. Please join me in thanking these great panelists. Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming, and please visit the AmericanProgress.org to learn more about the work that we're doing in the criminal justice space.
Tell everybody to watch the film December 3rd, not 10.
10 o'clock, HBO, oh, and hashtag, say her name, Sandra Bland.